Okay, so hello everyone. Good evening. So today we will be taking two important bills which have been in the news, and the very important fact is this. So they have also been a bit controversial too. So we will be discussing two bills today. So the first bill that will be starting for the discussion will be the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill, and the second one that we'll be discussing is about the SPG Amendment Bill. So both of these have been a bone of contention. Basically, a lot of debates have happened. So when you look into both the bills, first thing, the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill. So this is the one which has caused a lot of outroar, basically a lot of furor, especially outside the parliament. Whereas coming to the SPG Amendment Bill, it has created a lot of furor in the parliament. So there are multiple reasons why this has been done. So we will be starting the discussion now. We'll be starting the discussion specifically to understand about these two particular bills and know more about them. So just give me 1 minute before we start. So I'll just wait for a minute so before we start, so that others can also join us. Right. So, the first and the foremost bill that will be starting the discussion today is the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill 2019. So, we'll try to understand what exactly is this bill, what are the provisions in this bill, and finally, we also will discuss how this particular thing, why it has caused some kind of a problem in the country. So, these are the things that we'll be discussing today. So, yes. Right. So good evening everyone. Good evening. So the first and the foremost bill that we'll be talking is about the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill. So how we will be discussing this. So firstly, we'll try to understand what are the provisions in this particular bill. The first discussion would be on the provisions, and now within the provisions, then we'll see what are the issues surrounding it. So what could be done? That would be the future perspective, right? So these are the three things that we'll be specifically discussing for the discussion today, right? So we will start the topic initially. So first and the foremost thing, the bill that I'm being introducing today, I just termed it as the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill 2019. So it's very good that you are bringing a bill for the transgenders. And the first and the foremost thing, if you want to go ahead, if you want to understand this particular thing, the first and the foremost thing that we need here is this: a clear definition. Isn't it? A clear definition is important. So recently, the Rajya Sabha has passed the bill which was already passed by the Lok Sabha. So that means the bill called the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill 2019 has been passed by the Parliament. So the first and the foremost thing, as I said that what is important is the definition of a transgender. So, what did the bill say about the definition of a transgender? If you look into the definition of a transgender, the bill stated very clearly that a person will be called as a transgender if the gender of a person currently does not match with the gender at the time of birth. So, this is what the simple definition that the government has given. I'm repeating it once again. The gender of a person, if that is not matching with that of the gender that is present at the time of a birth, we call them as the transgender. I hope that's fine. So this is how the government has defined the transgender. And this may include the trans men, the trans women, the persons with intersex variations, gender queers, persons with socio-cultural identities, which we call them as kinnars or hijras. So all these people, the bill stated very clearly that this is the definition of the transgender, and these are the people whom we will be considering under this particular bill. Okay, that's clear. Now, what is this intersex is something which is very important to know. Now, that's right. So now, under the intersex particularly, what happens here is this: the person when he was born, the birth, The person may be a male, but the characteristics shown by the person can be a female. Got the point? So within the person, two different characteristics can be seen. So we call that person as an intersex person. So in the words of the bill, it says that it defines it as, I'm quoting the definition here. It says that a person who at the birth shows variation in his or her primary sexual characteristics, external genitalia, chromosomes, hormones from the normative standards of that of a male or a female body. So that's how they actually have decided this person as an intersex person. We could say bisexual. Yeah, it is bisexual may not be the appropriate word too, but yes. So the person's gender is one thing, but the characteristics shown by the person will be others. So we call them as an intersex person. So this is how they have taken the definition of the bill. Then, so in the society, you see that transgenders are discriminated a lot. There are variety of the reasons. We'll actually understand about some of the important reasons of them also. But before we go ahead, so what the bill says with respect to the discrimination of these people. The bill says very clearly that we are going to prohibit the discrimination which is being committed against the transgender person for denying any kind of a service. It says relation to education. For example, like any other normal kid, the transgender person also has a right to actually get education. Now, if some school management or if someone deny the admission to the person just for the sake of being a transgender, then that would be considered a kind of a discrimination. Similar case applies to the employment. Now, similar kind of things apply to the employment. The same thing applies to the healthcare. For example, if someone met with an accident and if the person was denied a healthcare just because the person is a transgender, again that would be considered a kind of a discrimination. And now, for example, there is a public place and if you don't allow the transgender to come there, or if you don't provide them the services which are generally provided to all the people, that would be considered a kind of offense. They have a right to movement again. They have a right to movement. You cannot actually deny their right also. They have a right to reside. They have a right to rent. They also have a right to occupy the property. And they also have the similar right like any other kind of person with respect to public or private office. Like, getting a government job or something. Yes, it's also there. Access to a government or a private establishment. In any of these cases, so they say these are the different kind of discriminations. But we'll understand about each and every one in a detailed manner now. Okay, so now let's talk about this particular case of education first. Okay, residence. So now, basically, a mother is a mother. Yes, come whatever, her child will be same for every mother. So it can be male or a female. But the thing is, in case if the child is a transgender, here comes a major problem in the society. Isn't it? So here comes a major problem. Here, even now the mother can recognize this child. There's no problem. The mother's love remains the same. But because of the societal pressure, what happens now, mother kills this particular love which she had, especially for her child. And what happens ultimately? There are instances where these children are thrown out of their homes. So they have every right to reside. In their home. And in case if the immediate family do not want to take care of this transgender person, then this person can be placed in a rehabilitation center on the orders of a competent court. Right? That is about the residence. When you talk about employment, again, here the thing is, you must have seen this. In Tamil Nadu, a transgender has become a sub-inspector. So what happened is this, in the case of a government employment also, wherever you see that we do not have a clear option basically. In majority of the application forms you find is just male or female and there is no option called transgender. And moreover, the way of recruitment is very, very different, and they are not sure. Basically, if you see in the sub-inspector test, for example, if you can see the physical standards, the way they conduct the examination for male and female will be very different from very different. And now in the case of a transgender, there is no clarity about it. So what happens now? It says very clearly, no government or a private entity has authorized to discriminate a transgender person in the case of employment matters, in the case of recruitment, or in the case of a promotion. Everyone has to be given a promotion irrespective of their gender. And now every agency, every establishment, they must designate a person as a compliant officer to deal with any other complaints related to the transgender which are related to this particular act. So this is the other important thing that we have under the employment. Then coming to the education, how the schools are providing the education facilities to all the children. In the similar fashion, they should be also provided to the transgender students also. That could be in the case of education, in the case of sports, in the case of any recreational facilities. All the things, they must be treated equally with any other kind of a children without any discrimination. Without any discrimination. Coming to the healthcare again. See, now the very important thing that we have here is this. Under the situation of healthcare, there is no clear idea. Now the healthcare that is required by the male and female will be very different from that of a transgender. So the bill says very clearly that the government will take the steps to provide the health facilities whatever are required to a transgender person, including the HIV surveillance centers and also the sex reassignment surgeries too. So there is a change of the genders can be done. So that sort of surgeries too. And now the government stated very clearly that we are ready to review the curriculum of the medical field to address any kind of health concerns of these particular people, and we also will provide the comprehensive medical insurance schemes for them. Guys, you must be getting this now. So we have seen different sectors. One is with respect to the residents, then we have seen employment, then we have seen education, and then we have seen healthcare. So all these are good, there is no doubt about it. But now here comes the major problem. How can you say that you are a transgender? So now the government says, if some person wants to say that they are a transgender, they are supposed to put an application to a district magistrate, the district collector, stating that recognizing that person as a transgender. So that is to be done. So now the district magistrate will be the authority who will be issuing the certificate after a committee do some kind of a verification things. Now, if someone undergoes a sex reassignment surgery, so even then, now this person, if they want to undergo a sex reassignment surgery, and that can be done, for that they can use a revised certificate also, where that can be taken up from them. Right? So if they want to be, after this particular surgery, if they want to be recognized as a male or a female, so they can actually get this kind of revised certificates also. This is what the bill says very clearly. Now, it is debatable point. Yes, that's right. We'll look into this. So firstly, what we will be doing is this for some time. We'll try to understand the provisions of the bill. After that, we'll talk about the concerns we have in the bill. Okay. After this particular provisions, we'll talk about the concerns in the bill. Okay. I'm not skipping them at all. Firstly, our focus is on the provisions. That's what I said in the beginning. Firstly, we'll look into the provisions. Then we'll look into the objections or the concerns we have in the bill. Okay. Now, moving on to the welfare measures, the bill makes it very clear that the governments, whatever are present, will take up the measures through which they can actually include these transgender persons in the society. And it must also take the steps for rescue and rehabilitation of these kind of people. Vocational training has to be provided. Self-employment opportunities has to be there. Some new schemes have to be created so that the transgender sensitive schemes have to be created. Promoting their participation in the cultural activities. And what sort of offenses can be there? Said to be called as a transgender, is it necessary to undergo surgery or recognize the principle of self-representation? So basically, there has been a demand going on, Saurav, here in this particular case, that the people want it to be a self-representation only. But now the government makes it very clear they must get a certificate from the district magistrate, which will be appointing a committee. So firstly, the committee would look into this particular area, whether the person is a transgender or not. Based on the recommendation of a committee, district magistrate will issue a certificate. So now, there is no choice for now the person to be declared selfly that this person is a transgender. That is the problem we have. Okay, it is not must that they have to undergo the surgery too, by the way. Now, so what are the offenses and penalties do we have here? So the bill talks about the offenses also, that is forced or bonded labor. They say if you are using transgenders for forced or bonded labor without paying any kind of a salaries or something. So but they have excluded the government service from the public purposes, except that in other cases they have used it. If they are denying the public places, usage of public places by the transgenders, that is an offense. Removing them from the household or a village is also an offense. Physical, sexual, verbal, emotional and economic abuse is also an offense. In any of these cases, the punishments and penalties can be imposed, which can the punishment can be between 6 months to 2 years also. Now, finally, this would be the last provision that we'll be discussing. Then we'll look into the objections. So they also says that we also have to create a council called National Council for Transgender Persons, which would consist of the Union Minister for the Social Justice and social justice. Basically, social justice and empowerment would be made as a chairperson. The Minister of State of the same particular ministry would be made as a vice chairperson. The secretary would be made especially as a secretary. They will be the member of this. And one representative would be there from the Health Ministry, the Ministry of Home Affairs and Human Resources. Apart from them, the members also include the representatives from Niti Aayog, from National Human Rights Commission and also the state governments. And they also will have 5 representatives from the transgender community and 5 experts would be taken from the NGOs also. And there should be some responsibility for the committee, right? So they say very clearly that this committee would look into any kind of impact that the policies that are being made by the government, what is the impact of them. Okay, they will specifically focus on that particular impact and they will make them understand what are the issues faced by the transgenders in particular and they will look into. So in short, these are the various provisions that we have under this particular transgender bill. Okay, but now there has been some issues going on. So before we go to the objections, let's talk about the social discrimination faced by the transgenders. See, not all the transgenders extort money. Generally, if a person, let's say that if a person commits a rape, it doesn't mean that all the men are rapists. Isn't it? If a person commits a rape, it doesn't mean all the men are rapists. And so is the case, generalization would not be actually taken into consideration. For example, you often find on roads, often in the trains, basically some transgenders extort the money from the people. Just because of certain people, we cannot just say that all the transgenders are like that. Like you and me, every transgender is also a human. Every transgender is also a human. And even there are certain transgenders who actually live their life with their hard-earned money too. With their hard-earned money too, there are such kind of people too. As I have quoted you an example of the transgender sub-inspector in Tamil Nadu. So there are many such kind of cases. There are transgenders who actually work hard to earn their own money and live their life. But we have a kind of a misconception about the transgenders also, where we see that once a transgender is found on a road, people start running away. There is such kind of a thing. They will not be seen like any other persons. For example, if there is a busy road which is consisting of over 100 people, and if we keep walking, no one cares about us. But let's see, if a transgender walks on a road, what happens is that people will be in a kind of a fear, basically, like what is going to happen. Yes, so this is also one sort of discrimination, by the way. So there is a greater progress in the area of the transgenders too. For example, there was a case where recently, certain kind of people who even contested in the general elections to become an MP and MLAs too. Such kind of things are also there. So we cannot just generalize that these transgenders are always some kind of people who extort the money and all. There has been a discrimination being faced by them. and that needs to be addressed. So that's the reason why the government has focused on this particular bill. I hope that's clear till now. Now, so we will look into the objections that they have. Basically, the transgenders in the country have certain objections on the bill. So let's look into that. Right? So moving on to this particular case. Now, the objections are there. Across the country, the transgenders have made different kind of movements. And now they say the government did not understand their concerns properly. The gender and sexual identity was not shown, not understood by the government very well. The first and the foremost thing they say is this. They have the issue with the word called transgender firstly. What are they saying here is this. The name that you are using called the transgender itself is causing some kind of issue. It is very, very restrictive. And now, moreover, the same bill, it do not talk specifically about separation of the gender binary and the transgenders. And they have been stating very clearly, we have developed an alternative wish bill which our demands are to be considered. So let's look into that. What did they say? So basically, government was not really very much interested in creating a bill for the transgenders, but it is based on the judgment of a Supreme Court in the case of Nalsa versus Union of India case judgment, basically. So which stated that the central and state governments are supposed to give a legal recognition to all the transgenders. We'll come to that. So now, they have rejected the word called transgender and they have changed the name of the bill completely. And what is the name they have given is this: gender identity, gender expression and sex characteristics protection of rights bill. They have changed the name of the bill from the transgender protection of rights bill to gender identity. So now they did not actually brought all the things together, but rather they will actually give an option to identify a gender, expressing a gender and the sexual characteristics of the people. So in this way, they want to avoid the name called transgenders as a whole. I hope that's clear now. So now the members of the community basically think very clearly that the transgender is different from intersex. Transgender is different from intersex. And now they want this kind of a distinction. The differences has to be maintained in the bill, which was not done by them. Now, the transgender says they have a different gender identity than what was assigned to them at birth. That is what the transgenders is. But the intersex, when you see that they have a diversity of gender based on the biological characteristics. Getting the point? So the transgenders actually are the people who actually change their gender, which was not assigned to them at the birth. But when you talk about the intersex, they are actually biologically they are different, and this is a problem they have. So there is some kind of ambiguity in the case of intersex, and the government did not take this into consideration, the differences they have in between. Okay, now it is very important that we also have to take this into consideration. But again, they say declaring that the person, the district magistrate would be allowing, they say it is something which is actually causing a trouble. Because this is going against the principle according to them called self-declaration or self-determination. And they also states that, as someone has pointed out earlier, that is, in case if the district magistrate rejects this particular application, there is no choice of appeal for a certificate too. So this remains other problem. And there has been a demand from very long by this particular transgenders that there are certain people who have been forced, who have been without any kind of a consensus. The sex reassignment surgery has been done, but you did not mention this in this bill that forced sex reassignment surgery is illegal. That was not done by the government here. And anyone who commits this kind of mistakes, they say that it was not also considered here. The action for the violations was not considered here. And now the healthcare needs of the people are to be considered. This is what the people say, that this needs to be considered here. So which is not being done according to them once again. And the council and this government says through the act very clearly what it says. It says that we will set up a national council for transgender persons. It says they will actually provide some kind of institutional framework for them. But now they say that they have not taken into consideration that a council for intersex persons was ignored. They say a separate council has to be created for them. In other countries related to this topic, or they are just humans, as here is discrimination and specific community in India. Corruption might arise there. That's true, that's true. So the thing is, basically they are recognized equal to other people in other countries. So we have this kind of issue in India, but in majority of the cases, they are actually treated like any other people only. Right? So this is what happening. Now the complete transgender community is asking for certain kind of changes in the bill. So that's what it has happened. So that is about this particular case of this bill of transgenders right, protection of rights bill 2019. I hope that is clear. So if anyone has any issues now, please you can let me know. So once that is done, we'll move on to the next bill. But yes. Okay. So the very interesting and a controversial bill again we have is this SPG protection group, Special Protection Group Amendment Bill 2019. The Special Protection Group Amendment Bill 2019 is a very important bill we have. Just give me a minute. There is some issue. Now before we go ahead guys, I would like to ask you a question. What is the purpose of SPG? Can anyone tell me? What is the purpose of SPG? So what is the purpose of SPG? Yes, please. The Special Protection Group. What is the purpose? What is its purpose? There must be some purpose for that, right? What is it? To protect the PM and the former Prime Minister. Special protection to the most important persons. Right? Right. So special protection to a special right. So now when you talk about this particular case, now Pawan, you have stated very clearly, top specially forced to protect specific section of the people, and then Pankaj says it's protection of the PM and former Prime Minister and its family. Yes. Just give me a second. Just give me a second. So just give me 1 second, guys. Right. So now we'll move to this particular case, guys. Now the very important case is this. So generally, in the Western countries, if you see, especially let's talk about the country like United States of America. So if you look into the case of United States of America, there is one thing which is important here. That is they use basically the United States of America, they have the Secret Service. So the purpose of the Secret Service is that they generally provide the security only to the president and the vice president. The purpose of them is only for that. So they will not do any other thing apart from it. So they will not look after the security of any other person. The objective is very clear that a security has to be provided to the very important person who is actually leading the country. So that is a very important case that we need here. Now, when you move further, when you talk about the Special Protection Group Amendment Bill, So we also have in India something called Special Protection Group. So now it has been some kind of issues have been there. So let's look into this. So recently, the Ministry of Home Affairs has introduced the SPG Amendment Bill in Lok Sabha as well as in Rajya Sabha. Later on, that was successfully passed in both the houses very recently. So before we go and understand about something called SPG Amendment Bill 2019, firstly, we have to look into this case. That when was the first act has been there? The first ever, the SPG Act, the Special Protection Group Act, was created in the year 1988. And what it exactly says, let's look into this. It says very clearly that they provide for constitution and regulation of SPG. So prior to this particular act, there is no special force called SPG, but they say with this particular bill, they want to bring up a new specially force called SPG, where how that would be created and how are we going to regulate that. And this would be a union force. It's an armed force of the union, which makes it very clear that it's a central force. And what is the purpose of it? At that time, it was mentioned very clearly that it is for the security to the Prime Minister and his immediate family members. So this is what the bill specifically says at that time in the year 1988. So later on, many changes have been made to this particular bill, which are not our concern to discuss. Basically, we have seen this particular cases with 1991, 94, 99, 2003. Many amendments have been done. So initially, when it was created, the purpose was only to protect the Prime Minister and his immediate family members only. That was the only purpose. That is, the Prime Minister and his immediate family members. But now, what happened after that? Because of this, many amendments have been made, and later on that also has included the former Prime Ministers and their family members. And the former Prime Ministers and their immediate family members also have been covered under the SPG cover. And now, that was made in different cases. That was made in different cases for different purposes too. But last amendment was made in 2003, right? So what it said is this. The amendment which was made in 2003 made very clear that we are going to extend the SPG cover to the former Prime Ministers and their immediate family members for 1 year after the demission of the office. And now they say, specifically the amendment says very clearly that after 1 year of the office, we will be actually looking into that, but for 1 year we will provide it. And after that, based on the assessment of the threat made by the central government, that can be either continued or discontinued. I hope the point is clear till now, guys. So in 2003, this was amended in this particular case. So that was happened here. So once that is okay, once that is done, then we will move further to the next important case. That was the amendment which was made. So now, in this particular act, so just using that provision which we had, the last provision of 2003, this provision has been used by different sections of the people. There are many people who actually have got the SPG protection, which includes the families of Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, the families of the former Prime Ministers. Until recently, we had this SPG protection to Ms. Sonia Gandhi, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, and also the Priyanka Gandhi. So because they are the immediate family members of the former Prime Minister. And now, that was also there to other people also. For example, it was there, okay? Till recently, it was there to these people. But earlier, that was given to Mr. Manmohan Singh and also his immediate family members. It was also given to many people like that. So now, what is happening here? The immediate family members, so they may have threat for sure. For example, when you talk about Rahul Gandhi, he's an immediate family member of a former Prime Minister. But the Prime Minister was long gone, and the SPG is being protecting these people even now. And in future, if Rahul Gandhi gets married, so now his immediate family isn't it? Even they also need this thing. So for this particular thing, this is going on. So the government was in a thought that this cannot be continued in this way, because if you are continuing in this method for long, you have to create a separate army for them. And according to the government feels this particular thing, this particular provision which you are talking here is impacting the many people, where it is actually losing its own objective, that is providing the protection to the Prime Minister. Okay, so yes, it's not our concern, by the way, Virendra. It's not our concern. Now, the point is very clear that this people, if this goes on, we have to create a specific force for them. And now, what it says, we have to create a specific people, we have to create a separate army, and then it may lead to anything, like we have to train them again, we have to provide the infrastructure, so it keeps on growing like anything. And ultimately, that would cause a major impact on protecting the primary person for whom the SPG was created, that is the Prime Minister, would be impacted. So therefore, the government says that we want to amend this act to focus on its core mandate. What is its core mandate? To protect the Prime Minister. Because he is a head of the government in the country, and his security is a very important case for us. That could be for the government, for the governance of the country, and also for the national security. Yes, so this is what the government has thought. And now, the government also has given many reports stating that, specifically the people we have mentioned earlier, the government said that these people have violated the norms of SPG 600 times in total. So what happens when you have an SPG cover? Let me tell you, if I am flying in a flight and if I have an SPG cover, so what happens is that there will be no checking, nothing would be there, I will be directly taken into the flight. Okay, they are directly taken into the flight. There is no checking, nothing would be there. And you know, when you have an SPG cover, wherever you go, you have to give the information to the SPG, who is the security head you have. You must give the information to the security person. You always have to travel in a bulletproof vehicle. These things have to be done for sure by these people. These are to be done for sure. And now, there are instances which the government has shown very clearly that these people, some people have not actually continued this and they have violated the instructions of SPG 600 times in total. Yes, so this is what it says. This is what it says. I'll talk about this in the end, Pavinder, okay? We'll talk about this, just remind me in the end. So, this is how the SPG has been misused, that's what the government say. But however, the thing is, it is the responsibility of the force, the primary objective is for the protection of the Prime Minister. And they may bring many controversies here and all, so they can show the political turn and political vendetta, whatever the things are. But here we are here to discuss about this particular case. And now, why is it important? Because like when you look into the neighborhood, with the Pakistan the way we are, with the China the way we are, so it's very important for us to protect the Prime Minister of the country. So it is very important for us to focus on the Prime Minister's security rather than any other people who can be anyone. Right? The Prime Minister's security is important for us. So that's why it says 2 amendments we are going to bring here. What are the amendments? Let's look into this. It says the Special Protection Group shall provide security to the Prime Minister and members of his immediate family residing with him at his official residence. Point number 1. Prime Minister and his family, immediate family residing with him at his official residence. Okay, so this is point number 1. Next, moving on, it also says very clearly that would be also given to any former Prime Minister and his immediate family members residing with him at a residence allotted to him so the former Prime Minister and family for 5 years. That too, they must be residing with him at official residence. And now, 5 years right from the term he actually left the office. Then, for example, by any chance, let's say, if the security has been removed to a former Prime Minister, if in case of a security has been removed for the former Prime Minister, now the important point that we have to understand here is this: the security stands removed for their family members also. It is not that the former prime minister has a security and do not have the security and family can continue. No, it's not that case. This is what they say. If the security itself is withdrawn from the former PM, it would be gone for the complete family. So this is what this particular SPG Protection Amendment Bill talks about. Right? So these are the two important bills that we had taken for the discussion. Yeah, let's talk about something which some others have been talking about. So let's say that Pavinder says leaders are protected by the SPG. So shame on the Indian system, there is no protection for the girls. So let's look into this case. The thing is, there are many insensitive comments have been passed for the past many days by many political leaders. That's good that you have talked about something really interesting. It is very important that we also have to ensure the security of an individual, security of a civilian has to be protected too. That is also to be maintained. But unfortunately, that is not being done because of a variety of the reasons. And now, India, when you talk about such a diverse country, we need a great protection for different kind of forces. And still, the problem is, we are still using the Indian Police Act of 1861. For your kind information, we are using the Indian Police Act of 1861. We did not make any reforms. We do not do anything. We just continue the passing on the British generation thing. Yes, this is something which has actually caused a lot of burden on the police. It is wrong to accuse the police stating that it's just because of their negligence. No, it's not correct, to be honest. There are multiple issues behind the issues that are happening. Number one is basically about the safety of the women. So when you talk about the safety of the women, so they need some laws, which we already have discussed in the special class some time ago, that we need some stringent laws which can actually create a fear in the minds of the people who want to commit some offense. Number two, if you can see, the first thing that you are talking here is about, this is particularly, the thing is, we are talking about the police. So as someone has pointed out rightly, that the police are actually facing a lot of burden. Let me be very honest, there are many incidents in the country where the police personnel at the rank of constables, at the rank of sub-inspectors have committed the suicides by using their service revolvers, by using their service weapons. Such kind of things have been there. And there is a need to reduce the burden on the police also. And now, we also have to ensure that reforms be made to this particular cases. It's not just about the Prime Minister and his security. It's not just about Rahul Gandhi or someone else. But it's about the citizens of the people. Right? So these things have to be kept in the mind. Basically, that's very important. Yes, anyways. So I think if anyone has any doubts in two of these topics that we have discussed, you can please let me know, or else we can wind up the session for today. So just let me know as soon as possible, so that yes, if you have any doubts, we'll take it up. Okay, right. I hope everyone understood the two bills very well. So we'll see. In case if everything goes fine, I'll take up two more bills. I'll take two more bills, and I'll actually update you about that particular lessons also. So I'll update you in case if I'm taking it near way. So there are three categories of police. Some think they are superior to one other, and there's a responsibility mismatch. Anyways, that's right. So right done. In case if there are no doubts, I'll be ending the session. Thank you so much for joining. See you all again later in the next class. So thank you so much, and bye bye guys.